So have you since played Silent Hill since the production started?
I tried for research. I tried, and totally honestly, it really scares me. I'm genuinely terrified of playing those games. You know, I used to get terrified playing Doom. You know, and this is a very similar thing. I can watch horror films. I love horror films, but playing video game horror films, playing video games that are horrors, that really throws me. I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. So no, I haven't.
That's fair.
Video game movies are notoriously challenging to connect with audiences. And what were you guys cognizant of that on the set and trying to make this something that audiences could really get into?
Yeah, I think they've got a checkered past, video games that you turn into movies. I always feel that if it's got a strong enough story, like I think Silent Hill does, that it will work as a video game. Otherwise, it wouldn't have done this movie. But yeah, I mean, it's always like with so many things now. It's an adaptation, and adapting to please everyone is not impossible. So you have to just trust in what you're doing, trust what the director's doing, and I really trust in Michael, and I think he knows this game inside out, backwards. You know, he knows it, and you just have to hear him talk about it, and he knows all these theories. And so yeah, I trusted in him, but I think hopefully it'll turn out for the best.
This franchise has been around the video game for about 12 years. Why do you think it has endured for so long? What are the elements that make it endure for so long?
I think it's been around. Well, as a video game, what the elements that make it.
It's a video game for 12 years.
Yeah. I think it's what I love about this, about Silent Hill as a video game or as a movie is that the elements of not being sure, insecurity, or like its overall paintbrush of fear that was created, rather than it just being a jump factor thing. It's I think in the video game you can choose different paths, and one of them might be wrong and one of them might be right. That in itself is quite tension making. I think hopefully we bring that to the film. You don't know whether these characters have made the right or wrong choices, or you don't know what they're seeing is real or what reality is. All of that kind of vibe around the film. I think that's what people fall in love with. Yeah.
Your character in the movie sort of seems like he's dragged into the Silent Hill world through Heather's journey. So what can you tell us about your character's experience in Silent Hill?
I can't say too much about my character. I know that's a cop-out, it's boring, but out of everyone in this movie, I think I've got a character that I can't really talk about. There's going to be some surprises about who he is and what he is, and surprises for people who played the game because he differs. And I was always told by the director, maybe don't go too far to look at the character in the game because we're going to change him, so that might not be helpful. I put it this way: I liked him as a character. I'd like him as a human being if I met him. So I think that's about as far as my second side.
Is there more freedom in playing a character that is very different from the source material versus playing like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, where we see very much of his head in the books?
I mean, both the first two TV or film things I did have been adaptations, so there's always been the source material there. Definitely say with Thrones, I went far more into looking at him in the books so as to how to play him on the screen than I did for this, because I don't think it was helpful for this. It's always a kind of balancing act of how much you stay true to the source material and how much you make it your own, and you have to do both. Hopefully you find a happy medium in it. But yeah, they were very different beasts, these two things.
So did you find freedom in the fact that you were sort of creating this character fresh, or was it more difficult because you didn't have to?
Freedom, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it was nice to be able to start afresh with the character. Although I've always had a slight fear that people know who this character, like with Jon Snow, people know who this character is already. They have predetermined ideas of who he is, and will I live up to what they want him to be? It's always slightly scary in that situation. But in the actual process, of creating him as a character, I enjoyed that freedom.
Just to kind of follow up on that question. When you're an actor and you do take on the role of a character with this source material, how do you know where to draw the line in terms of prior research?
When what, sorry?
How do you know when to draw the line in terms of how much prior research you're going to do before you are you going to create a game to a certain extent and go, wait a second, it's maybe different? As if you create a game, then you can't help but
But bring something of that character. Yeah. I don't know. I decided not to look at the character in the game too much with this because I was warned against doing that. And I looked at, and for example, in Thrones, there's a lot of people who haven't read the books. They decide to just go on what the script said. And that's one way of doing it. There's nothing wrong with that. With this, that's more of the approach I took. I didn't want to get too close to the character in the game because I knew it would be so different. Not so different. There'd be differences.
So on Thrones, you're no stranger to working with special effects, but this movie is clearly extremely special effects intensive. Is that a different challenge for you as an actor, or is it all just acting?
It was very much. There was one incredible CGI sequence in this which I've seen and I was a part of. Apart from that, it was all very visceral. Lots of people dressed up in costumes. There was hardly any CGI. Thrones is very little CGI, actually. It's quite sort of anything that can be made or can be created, it is done. And I think that can only help actors. I've done bits and pieces on other things where it's heavily CGI. And it does take quite a lot of imagination to go, right, you're in a green room and this is, you float in space or something. It's incredibly difficult sometimes CGI, so I've been lucky with these two things, and I think it helped in this film.
Yeah, is there more CGI in this than there is in Game of Thrones? Because you're outdoors shooting the natural elements of Thrones, and it seems like this would be more CGI heavy.
There's very little CGI in this film. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, apart from the one sequence, there's virtually none. And that's, I think it's very rare these days. Very kind of, very, very good. I enjoyed it in that way.
Game of Thrones is a hugely budgeted show for TV. How does it compare shooting something on that scale on the scale, or how would you compare the scale of Game of Thrones to a smaller
The TV's always going to have, even if it is Thrones, it's going to have less money than the film. So this probably was on the same scale as Thrones as far as what we had, what resources we had for this. So it's interesting shooting Thrones because it's very high budget TV. So I've been spoiled as to what TV is and what TV means. So I moved into film, and actually it was very little difference in how long the setups took, in what the props department was like. It's very the two experiences are very similar.
Now, both Game of Thrones and Silent Hill, they're very high in intensity in terms of all the scenes and stuff. What's it like having to always go into such these high intensity scenes all the time?
I think if you're always going to be doing a rom-com or a domestic drama where things are less intense, you may want that environment. You might want, I want to do something like Thrones where it's the same with me. I've done a lot of stuff which is, the stakes are very, very high all the time. And I'm feeling in my career that I want to try out everything. So I want to do something where it isn't like that. I don't always want to be doing it. I mean, I'll give myself a heart attack if I do. But yeah, so I don't know. It is tiring. It is tiring. Filming Thrones, filming this is very tiring because in this you're always about to die, or this, the stakes are so high. It's very exhausting.
Is there anything you can about Cecil?
Not much.
Building with Ciarán Hinds.
Ciarán Hinds.
Yeah,
Ciarán Hinds is one of the most lovely men you will ever meet, and also one of the most fantastic actors. I'm so privileged with the people I've worked with. the other older actors I've worked with, and he's now another addition to that list that I can say I've worked with. Fantastic.
I know it took a while to find the right Mance. Do you know what it was about him that they were like finally found this character?
He just is. I mean, he just is. Like, I was kind of in my head going, there are a few people that I kind of wanted it to be, but then when they came up with him, I hadn't even thought of him, and then I went, that's perfect. You know, I was kind of, Ian McShane. I was kind of going, Ian McShane would be right for this, and then they came up with Kieran Hines, and it was just perfect.
And final question.
It has an R rating, the film. A lot of horror movies now don't get an R rating because they're trying to appeal to a younger audience. So can you tell us anything about why it has an R rating or a little bit
This
about
film,
the lore?
why it has an R rating? Yeah, you just have to see it. There's no way you can make this film as anything under an R rating film. It has to be R rating because the people who are going to watch it want it to be R rating. That's why you watch the film. You won't go, oh. So it has to be.
Can you talk a little bit about